Welcome to this short video about City Week, the premier gathering of the international financial services community, organised by City and Financial Global in partnership with the UK's Department for International Trade, the City of London Corporation, the City UK, UK Finance and London and Partners. While normally held at Guildhall in the City of London, this 10th edition of City Week was held virtually due to the COVID-19 crisis.
I am pleased that thanks to our previous investment in technology and flexible working, the City has adapted well to working from home and providing services in a new way.
Everyone will be aware of the decisive action the government has taken on the economic front to protect the economy, with a clear plan to protect, support and create jobs, and hopefully return the economy through this process of national recovery to one of national renewal.
Inevitably, COVID-19 dominated City Week this year, including having to move to a virtual format for the event itself. To facilitate networking, we used the latest virtual event technology that enable one-to-one video meetings between participants and virtual booths, which exhibitors can man virtually. In terms of the programme, COVID-19 was an overarching theme that was touched on by many of our speakers, the scene being set by our opening panel.
I genuinely feel that we've gone forward 20 years in terms of the future of work, and now, as Linda said earlier, we've got to skill people for that, and we've got to give them the tools that are required.
Climate change was a key focus in this year's programme, with panel discussions on greening the financial system, sustainability, social impact investing and ESG, and climate disclosure and reporting. We were also delighted to have keynote addresses from Dr. Ho-Sung Lee, Chair of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, about the scale of the climate challenges that the planet is facing, and from Anshul Kent, MD and CFO at the World Bank, about sustainable bonds.
The key challenge that we're all facing, that climate is going to be one of the defining challenges, and it's one that's becoming more urgent every day.
And investors must look at their entire portfolio to see how they can use the power of investment to contribute to sustainable development and demand transparency from issuers in order to make sustainable decisions.
Society can make a point about how it wants to behave. It hasn't been straightforward. There's been two views being put forward at the same time. In Europe, very clearly, the view that took the ascendancy is that we as a society sort of value all citizens and the lives of all citizens, even if nominal GDP gets hit.
I see a parallel between the COVID-19 pandemic and another crisis the world faces, that's climate change. Limiting the spread of the virus has required everyone to act collectively to make life safer for all of us. This holds true for the climate crisis, with ever-rising greenhouse gas emissions that are already bringing increasingly dangerous consequences.
The good news, and there is some good news here, is that in large part because of the TCFD construct, there are sort of four main elements of the basic policy framework for disclosure, which are now actually very well established.
City Week always provides an opportunity to reflect on geopolitics and international trade flows. This year, we featured a panel discussion on global trade and investment in a changing world, as well as keynote addresses on the US market outlook from Dr. Heath Tarbert, Chairman and Chief Executive of the US Commodities Futures Trading Commission, and from Tadeusz Kosinski, Minister of Finance Poland, on European Capital Markets Union and the future of the UK-EU relationship.
It was great to hear Chris Willard talk about the FCA and the PRA, because certainly we would view our relationship with our regulators as very constructive. And too many people with public profiles have become very adversarial in a way to try and achieve their ends. And this is causing all sorts of societal issues.
The other thing we're doing is we're looking forward. We're saying, that's fine, but let's not live back in 2010 or 2008. Let's focus on the 2020s and maybe even the 2030s.
The European Union needs the Capital Markets Union now more than ever. In these difficult times of tensions caused by the COVID-19 pandemic, rebuilding a more resilient European economy through the development of a well-functioning integrated market for capital has become more urgent than ever.
Of course, the industry faces many other challenges. So this year we feature panel discussions on operational resilience and cybersecurity, the global fight against financial crime, international regulatory convergence, skills for the future, cultural transformation, and data analytics and ethical dilemmas, as well as a keynote address from Stephen Mayall, Chairman of the European Securities and Markets Authority, on the transition from IBOR.
You know, financial services and the financial sector is still so interconnected globally. I think the point is that the focus should always be on outcomes, and in our view, a principles-based approach can always be more efficient from an implementation perspective.
I think one specific area that really stands out in the benchmark reform regarding interest rates is obviously the cooperation between the public and the private sector. And I think that cooperation has been successful.
We have gotten real clarity from the official sector globally. Supervisors, policymakers have really been singing in chorus that we need to complete this work by the end of 2021.
So I think if we take a directly applicable regulation, we could promote a really good level playing field and address some of the fragmentation and inconsistency that really only serves criminals in the fight against crime.
The reality is that we have somehow fragmented markets. But like Nausicaa, I am fairly optimistic. I think we can achieve regulatory convergence internationally, but it's definitely a long-term game.
We're absolutely seeing that what customers want from us is changing. And that theme of personalization is part of that. They're increasingly wanting an experience that is more personalized to them. And that's true whether it's a business customer or an individual.
I think banks and insurance companies and other parts of the financial services market moved to remote working very impressively. And I think banks in particular are learning the lessons from the financial crisis of 2008, 2009, moved to operationalize government policy with respect to injecting capital and cash into the economy really very effectively in all parts of the financial services market.
Of the other sectors, and I'm thinking of big tech as a sector, for example, or some of the new players that are new entries into financial services and others, can learn a lot from the regulation and the regulatory success of financial services.
As the City of London prepares to embark on a new era as a fully independent financial centre, the programme looked to the future with a panel discussion on reinventing UK financial services and keynote addresses from Chris Woolard, outgoing interim CEO of the Financial Conduct Authority, on a new model for financial regulation in the UK, from Catherine McGuinness, Chair, Policy and Resources at City of London Corporation, on the future of the city, and from Lord Grimstone, Minister for Investment, Department for International Trade, on future trade agreements.
And one thing that we're working on, which we'll say more about later, probably in a month or so, is a simpler regime for little banks, which I think will be a very good thing to have, and which frankly has been impossible to agree in a European context, because one person's big bank is another person's small bank when you've got 28 different countries.
So starting with COVID, and this isn't a particularly original thought, many people have said this, the pandemic in many ways is bringing the future forward. So the economic impact of what we're seeing in terms of the measures that are needed to curb its spread has, and indeed will, sadly, speed up some of the long-term trends.
Regulatory cooperation assumes an even greater importance. So we would urge governments to avoid protectionist measures which could lead to fragmentation. Instead, it's through the development of global standards that industry can support the global economic recovery and enable investment into priority areas such as green finance and digitization.
And it's been extraordinary how throughout the pandemic crisis, firms have changed their business model, rapidly and effectively. Working from home has become the norm, but the message has been very clear. The city has been open for business and will stay open for business.
I hope that you've enjoyed this brief summary of City Week 2020 and that you will be able to join us for City Week 2021, which will be held on the 21st to the 22nd of June. If conditions permit, we will be returning to our traditional home of Guildhall in the City of London. I look forward to seeing you then.